All right, the purpose of the video is to show how you can create a bill of material using the Configurator tool online. And also we're going to map it within Machine Expert 2.3 and show you how to configure it as well. And we're going to talk also about the EcoStruxure Automation Device Maintenance Tool, the EADM tool, which is mainly used to update the firmware of the device itself. So when purchasing the Edge IO, the easiest way to do is basically to use the online configurator tool to create your bill of material. This tool is accessible from our website. It's sc.com. So once you're there, you want to go under Product, and you want to go select Industrial Automation and Control. And from there, you can select PLC/PAC and Controllers. And then from there, you can scroll down until you see the Edge IO. So it should be, it's right here. So Modicon Edge IO NTS. So from there, you can access, all the documentation also, right? If you go under documents, you can also access the firmware and everything. The firmware we're going to discuss at the last section of this video, but this is where you would also get the firmware. So it's right here, right? So you get the tool to update the firmware and also the firmware as well. The tool is this is what it looks like. So in this case, the first thing you want to do is you want to select your network interface module, the NIM module. So I do have this Modbus TCP and Ethernet IP. So it supports both protocols. So I'll select the NIM first. And then once you select the NIM, you can click on the plus here. And the next option it gives you is basically the power supply module, right? So you select the power supply. And then you can go back on the power supply to select the type of connectors you want. So in this case, I'll just select the screw without the cover. And then the next thing is you want to select, I have a discrete input module. So you can select the, in this case, I do have the DDI 1602X, right? So it would be this one here. So you can add it. And you always want to go back after you added the module you select the module again, and then you want to select the type of connectors, terminal block you're going to select with that. So in this case, I'll select the screw with the cover, right? And then we'll do the same thing for a discrete output module. I do have the DDO 0802, so which would be this one here, I believe. Then again, you click on the module again, and you select the type of terminal block you want. So I'll select again the screw with the cover. Then we'll do the same thing for a analog input module. So I do have the AMI 0400, which is this one here. And then you can select the terminal block again. So screw with the cover. And then finally, I'll just add a analog output module. I'm going to select the AMO 0400, which is this one here. And I'll select the screw with cover terminal block. This is just an example for a bill of material, but once it's completed, you can export this, right? You can just download it. You can click here, and this will it will give you the complete bill of material that we just put together and stuff. The other thing you can do also is get the you can get a 3D view, what it would look like and stuff. that's a 3D view. And you can also get the total I/O count, right? Like a summary of the I/O. This is what you would get. And then you can also believe you can get some sort of dimension as well. So it's extremely easier if you're going to use the Configurator tool to come up with a bill of material. So once you have the product and you want to set up, the first thing you want to do is basically there's a couple options, right? So this module can do Ethernet IP or Modbus TCP. So in this case, we're going to set up for Ethernet IP, but you know it has a web server to it, so you probably want to connect to it to assign an IP address, right? And once you assign an IP address, you probably want to enable the Ethernet IP protocol, and there's a few other things you want to do. So the first time you get this module out of the box, there's going to be a default IP address, right? And it's right here, right? So it's going to start with 10 dot, then it's going to be the last MAC address, octet of the MAC address converted in decimal. So in my example, I have 0583. So that's that's the last two octet here. So if you convert that into decimal, you'll basically end up with 10.10.5.131, right? And the default username and password to log in, it's right here. Security admin is the password, the user. And the default password is basically 8 A's, capital letter A's. The first time you log in, it's going to force you to update the password, right? So I'm going to go ahead and launch a browser. And then once you get there, you just want to put in your security admin for the user, and password is, the default is AA, 8 A's, capital A's, like this. And then again, it's going to ask you to change it, so you want to put the new password in. And then you are going to log in, right? So a few things you can do here. Actually, the best thing to do is, the first thing you get at this Edge IO, once you connect to it, what you can do is you can just do once you're connected, you can do a scan and create configuration. So basically this will upload what you have there. It will detect what you have so that you don't have to add the modules separately, right? So I'm just going to do a scan, do Edge IO _ demo. All right, so there we go. So we create a basic configuration. So the first thing you want to check here is, in this case, it doesn't have the IP address or anything. So we're going to go offline, and I want to change the IP address to, I'm going to assign a fixed IP address. Right. The other thing you want to do is you want to select the protocol that we're going to be using. So it defaults to Modbus TCP, but we're going to change it to Ethernet IP. So the mapping has been detected, right? So you can see all the mapping and stuff. So once it's there, so you want to go under Island Setup. And under Island Setup, you want to enable also, so there's two things, right? Under Island Management, you're going to set up the IP address, and you're going to select the protocol that you want to use, right? In this case, we're going to use Ethernet IP. And once it's all done, you want to go under Island Setup, and for Ethernet IP, you want to also enable the protocol as well, right? So you want to click on Edit Settings, and you want to turn on Ethernet IP. The other thing you want to do is you want to set up a credential. It's optional, but I guess you can put it for either anonymous or username. So in this case, I'll just select anonymous, and I'll just select no security and stuff. We'll disable that. Apply the changes, and then you want to transfer that to the island. So we're going to download it. There we go. And then now the next time you log in, it should prompt you to re-enter the default, the new password, basically. The other thing you want to do is, since it has a configuration, is on the rotary switches here, there's some settings, right? You want to, the bottom one, you want to, because since it has an IP address in there, you want to set it to a store IP address. But if you, let's say, for example, you try to connect and you don't remember the password, not the password, but the IP address, you want to clear it, you can set it to clear. But every time you change that rotary switch settings and you want to take effect, you have to basically boot up, right, with that switch on. So in this case, we're going to set it to a stored, and we're going to reboot the module. You should be able to reconnect to the web server using the stored IP address, the one that we just assigned. Just put in a new password. There we go. So I can go online and it should be all good. I'm online, everything is perfect. So under Island, again, I have, if I select the module, I have my IP address, I have Ethernet IP selected, and it's also, Ethernet IP is also enabled under the Island setup as well. So for the setup with Machine Expert 2.3, right? We're using version 2.3 right now. So right now, this version only allows to map the Edge IO if you are using an M262. Also, some of the modules might not be in the list as well. So if that's the case, then let's say, for example, if you have a different controller like an M241, 51, or a pack drive, or if you have some certain modules that might possibly not listed with Machine 2.3, then what you would have to do is create an EDS file and do it that way. And I'm going to cover that after this first presentation here. So in this case here, we're just going to map everything through the Machine Expert software. So I already have a base project here created, but typically it's pretty simple to do, right? So in this case, I'm using an M262. And then the first thing you want to do is configure your Ethernet port. So I just set up my IP address, it's fixed. And you want to possibly, in this case, it doesn't matter, but you know, if you were going to use like Ethernet, Modbus TCP and stuff, you want to make sure the protocol are active and stuff. So, and then after, because we're going to connect the Edge IO under the Ethernet 2 port, right, the device port. And under the Ethernet 2, you want to add the Ethernet IP scanner because we are using Ethernet IP. So you want to add this. And then right from there, what you would want to do is map the module, right, as you know, it shows in in the right order. So to do that, basically you can add, you right click on the Ethernet IP scanner and you can add your device. So it's already done here, but basically that's what it looks like when it's all done. Once that's done, is you want to click on the NIM module. In this case, I'm using a fixed IP address, right? So this is the fixed IP address that we set up in the previous step. So if I go online with this controller right now, and I'm gonna have to re-download quickly here. Right. Thing I made a mistake here. So I did have in my configuration here of the NIM, right? It's looking for a password here, right? So as you recall, I didn't put that in my configuration with the web server. So in this case, I would have to disable it here, right? So I could basically go offline and just select. Actually, what I'll do is it's easier if I just match it. So I'm going to go back to the Allen here. And then I'm going to change that to username, right? So username is basically the same credential that we use to log into the web server. And I'm going to re-download. All right. So now should be able to go back online. There we go. You can see it's all connected and everything is green. So this is the configuration with when this is showing the mapping right from Machine Expert, right? Let's say, like I said earlier, if you want to do, if you have a different controller, right, and you still have version 2.3, let's say like an M241 or 51 or a tack drive, or some modules are not in the list, what you would want to do is create an EDS file. For that method, it's not much more. It's about, it's like an extra step that you need to do. So you want to go back to your web interface, right? And from there, once you reconnect to the island, well, actually, you could be offline too, but you want to make sure it matches, right? So, once you know it's equal and everything, you can right-click here and select Export as EDS file, right? And then I'll just give it. It's going to export it. So it's going to call it EADM1. Go back to Machine Expert, and it's already done here, but you would go under Tools, Device Repository. And from the device repository, I already added the module and stuff, but I can, let's say, delete it. And the first thing you want to do is you want to import or install that EDS file. So you're going to go to where it says Device Repository, select Install, and we'll just pick this one here. Looks like I did it a few times. And then it's going to install, it's going to give it a name. To add it in the configuration, basically what you would do is let's say if we delete all this, then you want to right click here, add a device, and under the Ethernet IP device, you can select a bus coupler, and you should be able to pick your, actually you're going to go under other, right? Other, and you're going to select the, this is the one that we just added. In this case, we only need to add the this module here, because this module contains everything, right? So it's got the NIM and all the IO with it, right? So if you're going to make any changes and stuff, you would have to go back to the web interface, add your module in there, then re-export the EDS file. In this case, we're going to set up the, we're going to use a fixed IP address. I'm just going to give it the same address, 20. And you can see it's online already and stuff. One thing I haven't talked about is this is using the fixed IP address, right? But if you go back to the documentation, there's some rotary switches here. So it's possible, instead of using the stored IP address, it's possible that what you could do is you could assign what we call a DHCP. So basically the controller assigns the IP address to the device itself. The advantage of that is if you have a device needs to be replaced or something, right? You could just go ahead and just match the rotary switches to what it was, right? And then the controller will download the configuration automatically. So in this case, for example, if I want to set up the rotary switch to 001, right? So and again, you might want to make sure you cycle power the Edge IO after the change. What you would is where it says DHCP, so it says 001 here. So you would actually match the rotary switch to that address, right? And if you had a second device, you could call it 002. And the second one, it would be the same thing for the rotary switches. So again, the advantage with that is if you ever have to replace the module, you just match the rotary switches to that address, and you be up and running. You would need to reconfigure or download anything to the Edge IO. So this kind of explains the process for mapping the two options to map the Edge IO within Machine Expert version 2.3. One thing I want to talk about is, well, actually, the other thing too is if you ever need to, let's say, if this unit had a like credentials and you don't know what it was and stuff, you can reset that to factory default, right? And the way you do that is there's another rotary switch on the back of the NIM module, and that one you would do is you would set it to a reset, reapply power, then you would put it back to standard mode and apply power again. And what it would do is they would basically reset the user management, or the credential within the unit, so that you can go back and use the default password, right, which is security admin and 8 capital A's. And last section of this video is if you ever want to download or update the firmware of the devices, right? This is done using this tool. It's called EcoStruxure Automation Device Maintenance Tool. It's an EADM tool. And this tool is available on our website, right? Like I mentioned earlier, so you could go under software and firmware. And this is all the firmware available, but you also have the tool here as well, right? So once you install this tool, it looks like this. right? So it looks like this, right? So the first thing you want to do here is go into settings, right? And where it says package location, this is where you would, like if you download the firmware from our website and stuff, you want to unzip the firmware, the files, and put it in this path here. I mean, this is just the default one, and obviously, if you you know, you want to make sure it's in the right location so the tool can find the files itself, right? So sometimes, if for some reason you can't connect and it's not working for whatever reason, so what you can do is you can also reset the user management. Sometimes it may not work the first, you know, if you try to do it and stuff. So this is where you would use a rotary switch on the back, set it to reset, and then you apply power and basically reboot. And this will delete the credentials. It's going to reset the credentials to factory default. There we go. So I can go add the module from the catalog. I do have the NEC, put in the default IP address. All right, and the first thing you want to check is, see it says this certificate is not trusted, so you want to trust the certificate, right? And at that point here, I should be able to put my credential. So in this case, I'm going to use the default password. So right now it's reading the device. All right. And I can also add, there's some modules. To add the modules, I can click on add, and I can select scan the module, and it should detect them automatically. There we go. So to update the firmware, typically, again, there's a couple different options here, but what you want to do is you want to select, I guess, update center, right? You want to select firmware. You would pick the firmware. So it's going to, if you put the firmware in the folder that we initially discussed, it would find it automatically. So you would pick the latest one that you put in there, save it, right? So this will prepare the module for the transfer, right? And you would repeat the same thing for the other modules. So if you're gonna download this, you know, what I would do is do the actual IO modules first, and then I would do the NIM, you know, at the end. So once you select all the modules, you can go back here. You can select deploy, and select firmware, hit next, and it's going to tell you here it currently has version 501, and it's going to put in this version here, 1.571. So you hit next again, and basically it will go through the whole process. It's important once you do this process that you don't turn off the power or maintain a steady connection, otherwise you might not be able to recover, right? So you want to make sure that you have a good power source, and that the Ethernet cable is connected properly. So this completes the video. Thank you.